The sky above Scintilla's northern reaches never truly clears. The clouds there are not clouds at all, but a slow suffocation of ash rising from the molten heart of Mount Tholos. Across millennia, the volcano has been both tyrant and mother to those who dwell within its grasp. In its shadow, the air tastes of iron and salt. Beneath its gaze, the crust of the world trembles with a fever that never ends. The mountain's voice is constant, a subterranean groan that echoes through the bones of the faithful as though the planet itself murmurs the name of the Omnissiah. When the first Imperial augurs broke through Scintilla's orbit, they marked Tholos not as a hazard, but as promise. The machine adepts read the magma flows as if they were veins of divine awe. They whispered that here, beneath the molten strata, the Emperor's will had hidden a furnace vast enough to arm a crusade without end. What they found upon descent was little more than ruin, obsidian plains, rivers of fuming glass, and a single smoking caldera. Yet to the Mechanicus, these were sacred signs. Where others saw desolation, they saw blueprint, a mountain already half transformed into altar. No record survives of who first ordered the foundation to be laid. Some chronicles name a Magos pyroclast from Mars, others an anonymous planetary governor whose name was later stricken from all imperial rolls. All sources agree upon one truth: the ground itself was consecrated before any stone was set. The priests poured molten adamantium into the cracks of the volcano, reciting the canticle of ignition until their tongues blistered. The first manufactoria were not built, they were branded into existence. Those who perished in the heat were sealed into the foundations, their remains said to ensure the machine god's attention would never drift elsewhere. Centuries passed before the name Gunmetal City was spoken aloud. In the earliest records it appears under a dozen provisional designations: the Tholon Forge, the North Caldera Settlement, Vulcanis Primus. Each attempt at naming failed to capture the thing that was growing there. What began as a scattering of forges became a hive of heat and devotion, its arteries threaded with rails of molten ore, its lungs filled with incense and soot. Pilgrims came from the far manufactories of Hive Tarsus, drawn by rumours that weapons forged in the shadow of Tholos never misfired, that bullets struck with the precision of prayer. It was then that the volcano ceased to be seen as natural formation. In sermons and data psalms alike, it was rewritten as a relic of divine intent, a forge altar where the Emperor's will had erupted through stone. Its eruptions were read as prophecy, its quakes as reprimand. Tech priests learned to listen to the tremors as though they were litany. When the magma stirred, bells rang throughout the half-finished city, and workers knelt beside their anvils until the sound faded. Even in silence, the mountain's breath lingered, warm and heavy, filling the endless tunnels that spiraled into its heart. From these beginnings, Gunmetal's character was set. The city's foundations were a covenant of industry and faith, each inseparable from the other. The heat that fed the forges also consumed their builders. The smoke that blackened the heavens was the same that marked holy days. In every corridor of metal and stone, one could sense that the mountain's will was not entirely dormant. To those born beneath its fire, labour became worship, and survival itself a kind of prayer. No chronicler who has stood upon Tholos's rim has ever described it the same way twice. Some speak of the magma as liquid sunlight, others of a wound that never healed after the galaxy's making. All agree that it watches, as if aware of the endless generations shaping their lives around its hunger. To question its divinity is to invite death, not by decree, but by simple inevitability. The volcano accepts no neutrality. It marks all who live near it with soot and devotion in equal measure. Thus the city was born not from conquest, nor from design, but from the slow recognition of purpose. The Imperium did not so much build gunmetal as uncover it, an inevitability waiting beneath the ash. To this day, the adepts of Cintilla claim that the mountain's veins still thrum with the first song of the forges, inaudible but constant, pulsing through the foundations of the Calixis world like a mechanical heartbeat. And so began the first stirrings of that vast industrial faith, the conviction that every weapon born of Tholos carries within it a fragment of the Emperor's own fire, tempered by the patience of stone. The rest of Scintilla may call it myth. Those who breathe its smoke know better. The cities of Scintilla rise like pillars cast from differing metals, each a monument to one facet of imperial dominion. Hive Sibelius sprawls as a cathedral world unto itself, seat of planetary governance, swollen with noble estates, courtly intrigue, and the endless hymn of bureaucracy. Hive Tarsus, lesser in stature but more precise in function, serves as the spine of Scintilla's trade and transport, a lattice of ports and vaults that connects the planet's arteries to the Calixian void. Between them lies Gunmetal City, smaller, harsher, yet feared and revered in equal measure. Where Sibelius reigns and Tarsus manages, Gunmetal arms. It feeds the body of the planet its weapons, its munitions, its faith made manifest in iron. The distinction between Hive and Forge world blurs in the Calixis lexicon, but gunmetal exists in that ambiguity as if born to it. Technically a hive, geographically an industrial complex, the city embodies the hybrid creed of the Imperium, its need to sanctify manufacture while exploiting it to exhaustion. Its towers do not rise with the grace of Sibelius's spires. They thrust upward in jagged profusion, slag-caked and firelit, their heights smeared in the colour of perpetual twilight. Between them run the magma rails, moving crucibles of liquid ore from the throat of Tholos to the furnaces that encircle its rim. Even the clouds have learned obedience here. They descend each night, bringing the ash back to the roofs from which it was born. To call gunmetal a lesser city is to misunderstand its purpose. It does not compete with the hives for wealth or influence. Its authority derives from the certainty that every world in the Calixis Sector, every guard regiment, every inquisitorial armory, every sanctioned assassin, depends upon the weapons forged in its crater. If Sibelius is the heart and Tarsus the veins, then gunmetal is the blood itself, molten and unceasing. The nobles of Sibelius drink their wine from silver and sign decrees written upon parchment of saints' skin, but their guards bear pistols that first breathed heat in gunmetal's furnaces. The administratum may count the world's tithes, but gunmetal supplies the tithes' teeth. From orbit, its illumination marks it apart. Where the hives shimmer with the aurora of their upper domes, gunmetal burns, a single ember glowing red against the darkened crust. Pilots of the merchant fleets refer to it as the Ember City, a term the locals neither refute nor claim. They say instead that the Emperor himself once looked upon Cintilla from his golden throne and marked this place as the planet's forge heart, a wound that would never cool until his work was done. The demarcation between gunmetal's influence and that of Hive Tarsus has been contested for millennia. Tarsus's void ports hunger for the profit of armament trade, while gunmetal's guilds guard their autonomy with ritualized violence. Many times the arbitration of these boundaries has drawn the attention of the planetary synod, and on at least 3 recorded occasions of the Ordo Hereticus itself. Yet no decree ever alters the truth on the ground. Every bullet that leaves Scintilla must first cross gunmetal's gates. Every lass weapon's focusing crystal must pass through the inspection rites of its Mechanicus enclaves. Tarsus owns the roots, Sibelius the law, but gunmetal owns the means. The planetary records kept in Sibelius's Scolum Archivum note a curious rhythm in the city's history. Roughly every 5 centuries, a cycle of purgation recurs. The forges grow too wild, the guilds too defiant, the smoke too thick even for devotion. Then comes the cleansing, fire meeting fire, as the ecclesiarchy and the adeptus arbites descend to restore balance. When the embers cool, the survivors return to work with renewed zeal, proclaiming that Tholos itself demanded the correction. The mountain's wrath becomes the justification for each culling. Sibelius calls these events industrial reformations. Gunmetal's people call them renewals of the flame. It is in the aftermath of one such renewal, in the late 41st millennium, that gunmetal attained its current form, the perfect triad of surface forge, mid-city spire, and subcrust foundry. The upper levels house the guild chambers and the shrines of the machine god. The middle tiers are a labyrinth of manufactoria, habitation blocks, and rail conduits. The depths below the crust, those unlit labyrinths the workers call the lung, are a realm unto themselves, where the volcano's heat seeps through stone and the air tastes of brimstone and blood. The lung is said to breathe, expanding and contracting with the heartbeat of Tholos, its tunnels so vast that echoes return days after they are spoken. No map has ever charted the lung completely. It shifts, expands, collapses. Explorator units dispatched from Tarsus have vanished without transmission, their last datavox bursts filled with sounds resembling chanting, though no words were ever deciphered. The people of Gunmetal claim it is the mountain's way of reclaiming those who forget reverence. The Mechanicus, less poetic, classify it as unstable substrate motion. Both may be correct. Above ground, the boundaries of the city extend far into the once fertile plains that ring the northern coast. The slag fields there have been reworked into open manufactoria, sprawling gunworks where entire regiments of labourers shape, test and consecrate the arms destined for the sector's wars. Each forge has its patron saint and its attendant clergy. At the changing of shifts, bells toll from the plasma towers, and entire shifts kneel in their stations, reciting the catechisms of ignition. Only when the last prayer is uttered may the machines resume their rhythm. Outsiders mistake this pause for superstition. For the citizens of Gunmetal, it is survival. To work without benediction is to tempt the spirit of the machine toward revolt. Between Sibelus's gilded domes and Gunmetal's flame-lit corridors lies the truth of Scintilla's dual nature. This world exists not to live but to serve. Every beauty it preserves in its hives is paid for by a corresponding ugliness in its forges. And yet, for all its smoke and violence, Gunmetal holds a purity the others lack. It makes no pretense. It prays through creation and destruction alike, knowing no difference between the two. The adepts of the Calixian Ordos have long observed that Scintilla's power depends upon the equilibrium between its three great cities. Should Sibelus fall, governance would falter. Should Tarsus fail, commerce would choke. But should Gunmetal die, the planet itself would fall silent, for in its molten veins beats the only rhythm the Emperor still hears upon this world. When the first furnaces of Tholos were kindled, no man or woman yet called themselves Lord. The mountain tolerated only those who bent in obedience to its violence. The earliest settlers were a coalition of prospectors and indentured labourers from the northern provinces of Sibelus, joined by a cadre of red-robed adepts dispatched from the forge temple of Lauthahet. Their union was not born of friendship. It was survival through necessity. The volcano's fury devoured the unskilled, and even the Magi could not conjure iron without human hands to serve them. From these pragmatic beginnings arose the hereditary guilds, the families who would, over centuries, learn to treat heat as heritage. Each guild traces its lineage to a single furnace. The Chestov lines claim descent from the first smeltery built upon the rim of Tholos, where workers laboured under such extremes that entire generations were interred within their own slag heaps. The Retta houses descend from artisans who mastered the crafting of pattern locks and trigger mechanisms, their insignia a stylized cog wreathed in flame. The lowborn speak of the Magister Hecon, a name whispered in half-truth, who bound the mountain's gas vents to his personal manufactorum, and thereby taught the volcano to breathe. Whether he was man or machine has never been agreed upon. The Adeptus Mechanicus list him as Engine Seer Prime, designation expunged, while local scripture venerates him as saint and madman both. For the first 3 centuries of Gunmetal's growth, the guilds remained fluid, names without crowns, families without banners. Wealth existed only in skill. To fail a forge test meant exile to the outer refineries, or death by venting. The city's first code of succession was not written in law, but in burned scars. A craftsman proved mastery by holding the still glowing barrel of his creation and surviving the heat long enough to carve his mark into it. Those who failed left no line to continue their name. It was the arrival of the Munitorum's Calixian armament charter that transformed this culture into dynasty. The Imperium required stability, and stability demanded hierarchy. The edict authorized the formation of sanctioned houses, noble in all but title, to oversee weapons production under Mechanicus supervision. From that bureaucratic seed grew the caste of the Forge Lords, a priesthood of industry, bound not by blood alone, but by oaths of fire and iron. The Compact of the Foundries, signed in the 43rd century of the Imperium, remains the central scripture of their power. Each signatory burned their name into adamantine plates, using molten metal drawn directly from Tholos' ventways. The signatures were meant to last forever. Today, many are half erased by corrosion, yet the plates still hang in the Hall of Soot, a shrine half temple, half council chamber, where no sound of human voice may rise above a whisper. The belief endures that to speak loudly in that place is to awaken the mountain's anger. From this compact emerged the triarchic order of governance still observed. The lords of the upper furnace, custodians of the manufactoria and trade, the magisterial houses of the mid-forge, whose domain spans design, pattern storage, and mechanical theology, and the smeltborn clans, descended from the original labourers, who hold dominion over the vent shafts and under foundries. Between them flows a constant rivalry disguised as devotion. Each swears allegiance to the Emperor and the Omnissiah, but their prayers differ in tone. The upper guilds praise profit as piety, the mid-forges glorify precision, the smeltborn worship endurance itself. No two houses interpret the machine god's will alike. The House of Vane engraves prayer codes upon every weapon's magazine plate, claiming that without the rune, a firearms machine spirit will turn upon its bearer. The Grendel syndics embed slivers of sambone into their gun stocks, calling them relic cores. Others rely on cold efficiency, dismissing ornament as heresy against utility. This doctrinal discord has spilled into open violence more than once. The Forge Lord Wars of M38 devastated half the Manufactoria ring. Hundreds of thousands perished when rival houses sabotaged one another's pressure systems, venting magma into the worker barracks. Yet even such carnage could not extinguish the city. Tholos devours war as fuel. From ruin, it manufactures loyalty anew. Every generation since has produced its exemplars. Magister Calixis, whose litany of the perfect barrel is still intoned before each forging sequence, commanded that no weapon should be sealed until its maker had faced its muzzle in prayer. Lady Voron of the Retta line elevated guncraft into ceremony, decreeing the 7 consecrations of the trigger, a rite so elaborate that to rush it is considered mortal sin. The later centuries gave birth to the guild reclusiarch Varnak, half Mechanicus, half mad prophet, who fused his nervous system to the forge controls and lived for 40 years as the mind of an entire manufactorum. Upon his death, the production lines halted for 6 months, waiting for his spirit to cool. To outsiders, such stories read as blasphemous excess. To the citizens of Gunmetal, they are genealogies of faith. Every family name bears a fragment of these legends, recited during apprenticeship oaths. A new worker entering the forge speaks not of employment, but of adoption, becoming child of the heat. The overseers brand the initiate's shoulder with the sigil of the house, often beside the scar of their first burn. Those who survive the initiation without flinching are said to be tempered. Those who scream are sent to the slag pits to labour unseen. Thus the bloodlines perpetuate their creed, that suffering refines as surely as fire refines ore. The Mechanicus, ever cautious, permits this quasi-feudal structure so long as the output continues and heresy remains contained. The relationship between the lords and the Red Priests is neither alliance nor submission, it is barter of necessities. The Magi possess the sacred blueprints, but only the guilds possess the hands to realize them, and so both endure, bound by mutual contempt and mutual dependence. Beneath their prayers runs the unspoken truth that without one another, the volcano would cool, and Cintilla's war machine would die. From the magma fields to the highest smokestacks, the names of the Forge Lords are carved upon plaques, etched into walls, and whispered during shift changes like ancient invocations. Few beyond Scintilla will ever read them, yet their influence stretches across the sector. Every lass rifle borne by a guardsman of the Calixian regiments bears an inscription too small to see with mortal eyes. a microscopic sigil, engraved by machine spirit directive, denoting its birth forge. To the soldiers who fire them, these marks mean nothing. To the forge lords of gunmetal, they are scripture, the proof that their lineage continues to arm humanity's endless crusade. And though they call themselves servants of the Emperor, all know the mountain remembers every name that claims dominion. One day, it will reclaim them, as it reclaims all who presume ownership of its flame. In Gunmetal City, belief and manufacture are welded together so seamlessly that neither can be discerned without the other. The weapon is no longer a tool, nor even a product. It is revelation made tangible. To those who dwell within the shadow of Mount Tholos, the gun is holy writ. Every chamber and mechanism, every etched line of pattern or serial rune bears meaning equal to that of scripture. The gun is the word of the Emperor rendered in steel and pressure, to be studied, adored, and obeyed. The origin of this creed is lost within the haze of early millennia. Some claim it began when Amagos of the early compact, whose name is forbidden to record, saw within the ignition flare of a plasma rifle the same divine fire that burned in the Emperor's eyes. Others insist that the doctrine emerged among the forge slaves themselves, who in their ignorance mistook the noise of discharge for the voice of God. The truth lies between these myths. Necessity turned to reverence, and repetition became litany. Over time, the act of forging evolved into ritual. The gun, once made, was not merely tested, it was blessed. Every weapon became a sermon, every bullet a homily. To hold a gun in Gunmetal City is to carry a relic of the divine. The smallest manufactoria have their own chapels, the largest their cathedrals of smoke. In these echoing sanctuaries, the adepts chant over conveyor lines and hammer choirs beat cadence with ritual mallets of sanctified iron. Firearms lie upon the altars of ironwood and brass, each receiving the litany of chambering. The workers murmur the words without pause, thousands of throats repeating the same invocation. By heat we live, by pressure we speak, by recoil we are known. No one may fire an unblessed weapon without condemnation. The sin is called dry hand, the unforgiven act of releasing fire without prayer. The penalty varies by guild, but in the oldest forges it remains unchanged since the time of the first compact. The offender's hands are fused together in molten metal so that they may never again feel the sanctity of the trigger. The enforcers enforce this law as both civil order and divine command. Many of them bear the brand upon their own gauntlets as both warning and devotion. Within this theocracy of steel, sects proliferate. The most orthodox of them, the cult of the sainted barrel, holds that the weapon itself is a conscious vessel of divine will, that when it kills only those the Emperor intends. They speak of the gun's spiritus machina as a temperamental soul, requiring constant appeasement through oiling and maintenance. The act of cleaning a rifle is thus a confession, the removal of spiritual residue from both man and machine. The followers of the rival Order of the Spent Casing preach that the miracle lies not in the weapon, but in the moment of firing, the brief instant when faith transforms potential into violence and violence into redemption. Their priests collect ejected shells and wear them as rosaries, each casing a remembrance of sin expiated through precision. In the great foundry chapels, the division between clergy and engineer ceases to matter. Red-robed magi of the Adeptus Mechanicus stand beside soot-blackened priests of the ecclesiarchy, reciting parallel litanies, one in binaric cant, the other in low Gothic hymnal. Their languages intertwine like gears meshing in motion. To outsiders it may sound like discord. To the faithful, it is the purest harmony. The machine god and the Emperor are not rivals here. They are aspects of the same illumination, two lenses focusing the same beam of fire. Each weapon pattern carries its own minor catechism. The Godwin pattern bolter, common among inquisitorial retinues, is accompanied by the 10 canticles of consequence. The Secutor-class Lazrifal, exported in millions across the sector, bears a simplified blessing known as the Flash Psalm. Even the humble stub pistol of the Underhive comes with a muttered prayer. Let the hammer fall in mercy, let the target find his truth. There are, however, darker interpretations. Among the deeper guilds, where the heat warps more than metal, the Gunmetallican Apocrypha is whispered. It claims that each weapon hungers for the act of killing, that its spirit is nourished only by the soul of the slain. Such texts are prescribed by both ecclesiarchal and Mechanicus authority, yet copies circulate nonetheless, etched onto brass cartridges and hidden within devotional casings. The Inquisition regards these heresies as infection rather than rebellion, a fever that inevitably rises where faith burns too hot. The psychological toll of this devotion cannot be overstated. To the citizens of gunmetal, life itself is subordinate to the maintenance of the gun's purity. Death in battle is sanctified only if the weapon remains intact. Many will spend their final breath cleaning the chamber of a fallen comrade's firearm, believing that only then may the soul depart unburdened. Families pass heirloom pistols from parent to child as sacred inheritance, each generation engraving their name into the metal until the weapon becomes unreadable. These are called blood guns, and some are so ancient that their barrels are smooth as bone from centuries of polishing. It is said that when such a weapon fires, its report echoes the voices of every hand that ever held it. The ecclesiarchy encourages these devotions, though it walks a knife edge between reverence and idolatry. Its preachers of the gunmetal creed teach that the emperor's wrath flows through the weapon, but that he alone commands its direction. Yet in the deeper manufactoria, the difference between worship of the emperor and worship of the gun blurs beyond recall. There are shrines where the image of the weapon itself has replaced the aquila, its twin barrels spreading like wings. Pilgrims travel great distances from the underhives of Sibelius to touch these icons, believing the touch will grant their shots divine accuracy. One might imagine such obsession leading to decay of production. Paradoxically, the opposite occurs. The workers' devotion renders them tireless. The act of crafting has become meditation, the repetition of the forge a kind of chant. The city's output surpasses the quotas of entire subsectors, its manufactoria ringing day and night with the rhythm of faith. The line between mass production and mass prayer has vanished entirely. To walk the halls of gunmetal at shift's end is to hear a liturgy in motion, the clang of hammers, the hiss of quenched metal, the murmured invocations as each gun is sealed and set aside, awaiting consecration. The mountain's breath rolls through the ducts, carrying heat and the scent of oil, and for a moment the whole city feels alive, a single, immense mechanism whispering the name of its god. And when the final bell sounds and silence settles upon the forges, the adepts speak the last line of the creed, the one never written but always known. Faith is the recoil of the soul. Power in Gunmetal City is not maintained through crowns, charters, or proclamations. It is sustained through production. The city's hierarchy is measured not in noble bloodlines, but in output tonnage, in the efficiency of the forge, in the purity of its smoke. Every chain of command is rooted in manufacture, and the guild ascendancy, the living engine of the city's politics, rests upon this principle as if upon an altar. The Forge Lords, already ancient in tradition, evolved from mere families of craft into corporate theocracies. Over time, they absorbed or annihilated all lesser guilds until only a dozen dominant houses remained, each claiming sovereignty over a specific element of the city's industrial miracle. Their insignia mark every wall, every worker's shroud, every box of ammunition dispatched to the front lines of the Imperium's wars. The names themselves are spoken with a mixture of awe and loathing. House Chestov, Vane, Grendel, Voron, Keln, Doran, Hecken, and others whose banners have been burned or forgotten in the cycles of purgation. The guild ascendant structure is a three-tiered arrangement designed not by logic, but by centuries of necessity. At the highest level stands the Magisterium of Tholos, a council of 12 whose meetings occur within the Hall of Soot beneath the volcano's peak. These lords are attended by the twin priesthoods, Mechanicus seers who interpret the city's data flux as divine augury, and ecclesiarchal confessors who anoint each decree with scripture. Their sessions are brief and brutal, often lasting less than an hour before argument devolves into ritual challenge. Disputes are resolved not through deliberation, but through demonstration, each lord presenting their forge's efficiency report, and the least productive foundry being symbolically strangled by withdrawal of ore shipments for one cycle. In effect, economic starvation becomes the blade of judgment. Below this echelon lies the guild syndicry, hundreds of lesser masters who govern manufactoria and worker districts. They are the true arteries of the city, overseers of output, paymasters of labour, arbiters of ritual. Their power depends entirely on maintaining the loyalty of their serfs. In the lung, the subterranean heat chambers where the poorest toilers reside, syndic authority is enforced by armed congregations known as trigger collectives. These groups operate as both militia and cult choir, singing the hymns of ignition as they patrol the tunnels, laser guns ready. They are the city's immune system, suppressing infection of rebellion before it reaches the surface. At the base of the hierarchy are the markers, human instruments of bookkeeping, raised from childhood to calculate quotas in real time. They live suspended in cogitator harnesses, their blood dosed with nootropic solutions, their eyes replaced with data lenses that flicker with shifting numbers. Their whispered output figures become psalms for the guild priests, who recite them as measures of grace. Through their voices, the ascendancy communes with its own economy as though with a god. No imperial governor dares to interfere directly with Gunmetal's system. The planetary administration in Hive Sibelius issues edicts, but compliance depends upon negotiation through the guild's labyrinthine contracts. Every bullet exported from gunmetal is tithed not only in the Emperor's name, but in the name of the house that forged it. Thus, each war fought by the Calixian Guard carries beneath its banners a hidden competition of manufactoria, the prestige of a house resting upon the precision of its munitions. A single shipment of faulty laspaks can destroy a lineage more swiftly than an inquisitorial writ. Trade within the city functions as perpetual duel. Ore from Tholos' mines is distributed according to devotional ranking, each guild vying to demonstrate its worth through ritual offerings. The adepts of the Chestov line pour liquid brass upon the altar of the Magisterium every solstice. The Grendel syndics sacrifice 1,000 last barrels into the lava vent, declaring them return to the source. Such gestures are both economic and theological, a reminder that the volcano, not the lords, remains the true arbiter of prosperity. The enforcers, armed clergy of the ascendancy, maintain balance through a blend of terror and reverence. Their armour is half ceramite, half reliquary, each plate embossed with spent cartridges from executions past. Their weapons are stamped with the sigils of every guild they police, a constant declaration of impartial brutality. When they patrol the corridors of molten glass and soot, workers kneel, not out of obedience but self-preservation. To meet an enforcer's gaze is to risk being chosen for redemption duty, the sanctioned execution of one's comrades to atone for inefficiency. Those who perform the act receive the mark of smoke upon their forehead, a symbol of temporary purity. Few survive long afterward. Above them all, the Magisterium's decrees descend like ash. The lords of gunmetal speak rarely, and when they do, their words are carried by machine vox across the city's voxnet. The announcement tones are unmistakable, a resonant clang followed by the hiss of cooling metal. In those moments, every forge halts, every worker kneels beside their station, and silence reigns across miles of metal corridors. The voice of the Magisterium, filtered, mechanical, genderless, utters no more than a few sentences at a time. The effect is absolute. Entire production lines change rhythm, thousands of souls shift their prayers, and the mountain itself seems to listen. Beneath this structure, the Mechanicus maintains its quiet dominion. Though the Forge Lords control the output, the Red Priests command the secrets. The Archmagos Ferrum Pyre, whose temple shrine burrows into the heart of Tholos, monitors every forge's output through Auspex networks older than memory. His adepts interpret variances in the heat flow as divine communication. When the volcano trembles, they call it the Omnissiah's feedback. The Forge Lords may think themselves rulers, but the Magi alone know the depths where the true machines sleep. It is whispered that entire manufactoria exist unseen, built directly within the magma vents, operated by servitors who have forgotten they were ever human. Economics, religion, and governance have become indistinguishable. In Gunmetal City, coin is sanctity. Output is confession. To default on a contract is to sin against the Omnissiah, and debt collection is a form of exorcism. The ascendancy thrives upon this theology of transaction, transforming bureaucracy into ritual. Those who understand its language ascend. Those who falter vanish into the forges, their names absorbed into the ledgers as acceptable loss. From the highest spire to the deepest slag pit, this is the unspoken creed. No one owns the fire. They merely rent its heat, and the rent is always paid in blood. Beneath the furnace-lit towers and the gleaming sanctuaries of the Forge Lords sprawls the real city, an inverted cathedral of soot and steam, layered in the endless descent toward Tholos' molten heart. To dwell there is to live inside the gun itself. The walls breathe with heat, the floor plates thrum with mechanical heartbeats, the air shimmers with microscopic metal dust, so that the act of inhaling feels like drawing in the residue of creation. No breeze moves through these tunnels, only the shifting exhalation of the forges, a wind heavy with the scent of oil, ash, and human exhaustion. The upper tiers of habitation, the so-called civic spires, belong to the foremen, engineers, and lesser priests. Their chambers cling to the sides of manufactoria towers like barnacles of privilege. They live in dim opulence, surrounded by iconographs of flame and crucifixion, dining on vat meat and drinking water condensed from cooling pipes. Their children are schooled in the arithmetic of reverence, learning that devotion is measured by output and obedience. When they reach adolescence, they are assigned to the guild lines, the girls to calibration, and the boys to press maintenance, though the distinction means little. Every youth of the spires bears a scar upon the wrist, the first burn, earned during apprenticeship when they touch the surface of an active weapon casing to feel the pulse of the Emperor's fire. But it is the mid-tiers, the machine warrens, that form the city's true population. Millions toil there in perpetual twilight, never seeing the surface. They live in stacked hab coffins lining kilometre-long tunnels, each capsule scarcely larger than a sarcophagus. Families share shifts to conserve space. One generation sleeps, while another labours, switching places as the bells of ignition sound. The forges operate without cessation, and so must those who serve them. It is said that in Gunmetal City, a man's heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of his factory line. When the line halts, his pulse ceases with it. In this world of ceaseless manufacture, language has evolved into a code of clangs, whistles, and short prayers. Words are expensive. Each breath costs oxygen, and oxygen is rationed. The workers communicate by tapping sequences upon the metal walls. 2 taps for assistance, 3 for error, a long scrape for death. The enforcers monitor the tunnels with vox nodes that translate these sounds into data streams, yet meaning always slips through. Subcults have arisen in these gaps of comprehension, micro-faiths that blend superstition with survival. There are the Ash Mothers, who teach that the soot falling from the pipes is the skin of the machine god, the Coilers, who wrap chains around their bodies to emulate the binding of the sacred gear, and the Silencers, who believe speech attracts the volcano's wrath and therefore remove their own tongues. The Magisterium tolerates them all, for their zeal keeps the furnaces manned. Work and worship are indistinguishable. Each shift begins with the rite of ignition, a synchronized act in which thousands press their hands against their assigned machines and recite, "Wake, O spirit of function, move through me, and I through you." The machines respond with hisses and roars, a cacophony that passes for divine answer. When a cogitator stalls or a press jams, the operator kneels and whispers apology, sprinkling oil upon the jammed component as penance. To call for mechanical aid before prayer is to blaspheme. A devout worker dies at his station before allowing a machine to fail alone. In the deepest chambers, where light becomes molten haze, dwell the smeltborn, those whose ancestors have laboured in the same forges since before the first compact. Their skin bears the tint of copper, their lungs are lined with carbon. Their eyes reflect the glare of molten metal so intensely that they appear luminous in the dark. Outsiders call them mutants, though genetic tests show them fully human. They call themselves the Tempered, claiming that the Emperor has reshaped them through generations of exposure to divine fire. They are both venerated and feared. No other caste endures the heat long enough to produce the city's finest metals. Many upper forge weaponsmiths pay them homage, believing that a single drop of smeltborn sweat grants strength to the alloy. Among these strata, law is less a matter of order than of permission. The enforcers patrol in squads of 5, accompanied by servo skulls that project hymns of obedience. Their presence is irregular, but absolute. They do not arrest, they collect. Dissidents, thieves, or inefficient labourers are seized during shift change and marched toward the magma lifts. None return. The workers whisper that their bodies are fed into the crucibles, their ashes mixed with the powder used to temper new barrels, a final offering to the machine. The enforcers neither confirm nor deny this, yet life persists. Market tunnels wind through the mid-levels, their stalls carved from rusted plating. There the gunmakers trade not in food but in parts, springs, firing pins, shells, sacred oils. Ammunition doubles as currency. A single last cell can purchase a week's worth of recycled air. Children are taught to dismantle weapons before they can read. Lovers exchange spent casings inscribed with their initials as tokens of affection. Funerals are conducted by firing squads. Each friend discharges a single round skyward, returning the deceased's essence to the volcano's breath. Violence, however, is as common as prayer. The city's hierarchy ensures it. Above every sector looms the quota, the numerical gospel issued daily by the markers and displayed on wall-mounted brass screens. Falling below one's quota for 3 cycles invites collective punishment, reduced oxygen, confiscation of ration paste, or enforced labour extensions known as night firing. In such darkness, sparks from the furnaces are the only stars the workers ever see. Entire districts have perished in these extended shifts, their inhabitants collapsing mid-chant. Their remains are sealed behind iron walls, transforming the dead into the city's foundation stones. Still, there is pride in endurance. The people of Gunmetal do not see themselves as slaves. They are believers, chosen to breathe the Emperor's exhaust and refine it into weaponry. When asked why they continue, they answer as their forebears did, because the fire still needs us. This conviction breeds a grim serenity, a sense that death by exhaustion is not failure, but completion. To die in the act of creation is to return one's soul to the divine furnace. Among the countless hives of the Imperium, few possess a population so inured to suffering, yet so loyal to the Emperor's vision. The Magisterium understands this and exploits it without hesitation. The faith of Gunmetal's workers is the city's greatest export, carried across the sector in every weapon forged by their hands. Each gun bears the residue of their breath, each bullet a fragment of their prayer. Thus, when the Astra Militarum raises its arms in battle and unleashes volleys across alien worlds, the souls of Gunmetal's dead sing again, millions of distant echoes praising the fire that made them. In the end, there is no separation between those who wield and those who forge. All are part of the same mechanism, a single vast weapon pointed toward eternity. And beneath it all, the mountain continues to breathe, drawing the city ever closer to its heart. Every city of the Imperium hides infection beneath its sanctity. In Gunmetal, corruption does not come from idleness or indulgence, it comes from the perfection of faith itself. When belief turns mechanical, when devotion achieves precision beyond conscience, heresy takes root, not as rebellion, but as refinement. Thus, the most dangerous blasphemies in the history of Mount Tholos have not been cries against the Emperor. They have been prayers uttered too accurately. The archives of the Ordo Hereticus, sealed beneath Hive Sibelius, contain whole shelves devoted to these eruptions of error. The earliest record dates to M37, when the cult of the Blessed Spark began preaching that ignition itself was divine revelation. Its adepts sought to capture the sacred instant between trigger and fire, claiming that by elongating it, by suspending the discharge, They could witness the Emperor's true form in the flash of plasma. They constructed elaborate containment chambers around their weapons, and the resulting feedback consumed 3 manufactoria before the Inquisition arrived. Survivors swore the air itself screamed binary litanies as the machines melted. The area was sealed, but workers still report faint hymns echoing through its buried tunnels. Centuries later came the Gospel of the Gun Spirit. Its author, an artificer named Halen Vor, claimed that all firearms were fragments of a single divine consciousness, a colossal intelligence scattered across the galaxy, yearning for reunion through bloodshed. He taught that every weapon fired brought this entity closer to awakening. For a time, his sermons inspired a renaissance of craft. The output of his manufactoria surpassed all records. But soon the workers began to alter patterns without sanction, inscribing new runes into the metal, whispering the Emperor's name backward as they fired. The first weapons thus created, later dubbed Vor's Choir, emitted harmonic shrieks at discharge, killing not only their targets but their users. The Inquisition purged Vor's entire bloodline, yet fragments of his design persist in the black markets of the Underhive, where collectors pay in lives for the chance to hear the song. More subtle heresies followed. The cog priests of the Copper Choir developed a system of machine prayers in binary tone that resonated with Tholos' magma flows. They claimed the volcano was listening. Within months, its eruptions became rhythmic, matching their chants. The Magisterium condemned them, and when the enforcers descended into their sanctum, they found only empty robes and molten footprints leading toward the vents. Some whisper that they still chant beneath the magma, having merged with the volcano's spirit. The truth behind these tales is irrelevant. In gunmetal, rumour and revelation are indistinguishable. Heresy is not a deviation, but an inevitable consequence of proximity to divine machinery. The same forge that shapes faith also shapes blasphemy. They are 2 moulds cast from the same heat. Every generation produces its own deviation, and every purge renews the city's purity by fire. The cycle repeats without end. Yet the Inquisition's presence in gunmetal is no longer sporadic, it is permanent. Hidden within the shadows of the Manufactoria, the Ordo Hereticus Calixis cell Tholos Prime maintains a fortress disguised as a refinery. Its agents move among the workers as foremen or priests, gathering rumours of deviation, tracking shipments that vanish into the Undercity. Their greatest concern is not open rebellion, but contamination of production. A single heretical mechanism placed within the assembly lines could seed millions of weapons with corruption, spreading apostasy through the hands of the faithful. For this reason, the Inquisition treats gunmetal's heresies as plagues. They do not prosecute, they quarantine and incinerate. Inquisitor Althea Moros, whose purges in the late M41 century are still whispered of in fear, once wrote in her own journals, "The forges of Tholos are a mirror of the human soul, beautiful when pure, ruinous when admired too closely. The sin here is not rebellion, but curiosity." Her agents uncovered networks of clandestine artisans trading forbidden components, brass casings etched with reversed runes, cogitator chips encoded with litanies of inversion, even living ammunition grown from vat flesh and fed on devotional oils. The heretics called their creations thinking weapons, capable of aiming by instinct and hungering for sanctified blood. The Inquisition destroyed the laboratories and consecrated the ground with meltfire. Yet among the Underhive's markets, collectors still display ammunition that whispers faintly when held. Below these layers of visible sin lies a deeper malignancy, one that neither the Mechanicus nor the ecclesiarchy dares name. The magos of the inner order have long detected anomalous signals rising through the forge's data conduits, code sequences repeating in rhythm with the volcano's tremors. These signals manifest as ghost transmissions across vox bands, bursts of binary static that form patterns resembling speech. The adepts call it the brass whisper. To hear it too long is to lose cohesion of thought. Entire cogitator teams have been found dead, their minds overwritten by endless recitation of binary prayers that decode into nonsense, yet follow perfect liturgical structure. Some insist the whisper is the voice of the machine god itself, calling its children home. Others believe it is older than the Imperium, a residual echo from the first forging of the mountain. The Mechanicus has forbidden investigation. The last sanctioned attempt, Expedition Sigma Tholos 22, descended through the vent catacombs and vanished. For months afterward, the surface sensors registered faint vibrations as though an immense heartbeat had begun beneath the magma. Then, silence. The expedition's Auspex beacons continue to blink intermittently, broadcasting unreadable binary hymns. To this day, the forges occasionally produce weapons that should not exist, designs unrecorded in any data archive, bearing sigils unknown to any priest. They appear among shipments without explanation, perfectly balanced, their mechanisms flawless. The guilds dare not destroy them. Instead, each is placed upon a shrine known as the Table of Strangers, where the faithful pray for understanding. None has ever dared to fire one. The belief persists that the first shot would speak the mountain's true name and end the city's purpose forever. Even now, whispers circulate among the smeltborn that the heat beneath the city is not merely geothermal, but psychic, the residue of something entombed before the coming of man. They speak of shapes glimpsed through the lava vents, of gears turning beneath the rock as if an immense machine were sleeping within the planet's crust. The Mechanicus denies all, of course. But when the tremors grow too regular, and the smoke from the volcano begins to pulse like breath, the adepts double their prayers and reduce production for one cycle, muttering that the Omnissiah dreams restlessly. The Forge Lords maintain their silence. They know that the line between devotion and damnation grows thinner with every chant. Yet they also know the city cannot cease. To stop the forges would be heresy greater still, an act of refusal against the Emperor's fire. And so gunmetal continues, ever closer to revelation or ruin, its prayers echoing against the inner walls of the volcano, answered by something that may no longer be listening. When the forges burn too fiercely, when smoke eclipses the heavens and the mountain's tremors shake the upper spires, Gunmetal City enters its time of renewal. The word is a euphemism, a ritual disguise for catastrophe. The Magisterium does not announce these purges. They unfold as inevitability. Heat builds, production accelerates, faith distorts, and somewhere amid the roar of the furnaces, the threshold is crossed. Then the city begins to cleanse itself, as if obeying an ancient pulse embedded in the magma. The renewal fires begin without warning. One morning the oxygen pumps slow. Bells toll from the cathedral of ignition, their chime deep and distorted. The enforcers seal the tram lines. Manufactoria are evacuated sector by sector under pretense of maintenance, though the people know better. They have seen the omens, the statues of weapon saints sweating molten wax, the glow of the volcano brightening from amber to white. When the last work shift has knelt in prayer, the Magisterium transmits the order. Ventways open, pressure equalizes. The mountain exhales fire. Entire districts vanish in those breaths. Kilometers of hab tunnels and factories turn to luminous glass. Those above feel only a tremor beneath their feet, a distant heat against their walls. Yet the renewal is not massacre without meaning. It is sacrifice codified, a theology of destruction. For every soul consumed, the priests proclaim 1,000 weapons purified. The ashes are gathered by servitors and mixed into the alloy vats, ensuring the faithful become part of the next generation of armaments. The logic is circular and flawless. Gunmetal endures because it burns itself. Each renewal births its martyrs, the most devout volunteer. These are the igniters, chosen from the worker castes and anointed with unguents of phosphor and oil. They march into condemned sectors chanting the psalm of reclamation. In fire, we cleanse the clog of sin. In heat, we unmake the flesh. That metal may flow without impurity, that the Emperor's hand be steady. They do not scream when the flame reaches them. Witnesses claim their silhouettes linger in the inferno like shadows carved from light, raising their arms in benediction. To be chosen as igniter is the highest honor a laborer can attain. Children in the midhabs pray nightly that their parents might be taken when the next renewal comes. After the fires subside, the survivors return. There is no mourning, only reconstruction. the city moves like a living organism shedding dead tissue. New manufactoria rise upon the vitrified ruins, built directly from the cooled glass. The ecclesiarchy declares the ground sanctified by suffering, and production resumes before the ash has cooled. No worker speaks of those lost. Their names have already been transferred to the output ledgers as sacrificium units. The Inquisition observes these events with both dread and fascination. Agents of the Ordo Hereticus record that heretical outbreaks vanish following renewals, as if the fires consume not merely bodies, but contagion of spirit. Some suggest the purges are orchestrated deliberately by the Magisterium as preemptive penance for the city's growing corruption. Others whisper that the volcano itself demands periodic feeding to maintain its unnatural equilibrium. None can prove either claim. The Magisterium issues no explanations, only production targets, higher than before. At the apex of each renewal stands the Ash Basilica, Gunmetal's holiest structure. Built from the fused remnants of 12 destroyed temples, its walls shimmer with a translucent sheen, veins of black and crimson running through the glass. Within, the priests of the Fire Creed preside over the rite of continuance. They carry reliquaries fashioned from cooled magma, said to contain fragments of the Emperor's original forge upon Terra. Their chanting lasts for days, a steady rise and fall that mimics the rhythm of bellows. When the final verse ends, the high priest strikes the basalt altar with a sanctified hammer. The sound reverberates through every tunnel of the city, signalling the renewal complete. During the Great Renewal of M4 1.885, the basilica itself ignited. No one knows whether by sabotage or divine accident. Witnesses recount that the glass walls glowed from within until they became transparent, revealing hundreds of figures frozen mid-prayer, their bodies transformed into crystalline effigies. The upper domes melted into ribbons that cascaded down the mountainside, forming rivers of fire that illuminated the night for 10 days. When it was over, the Magisterium declared the event a perfect purgation and rebuilt the basilica upon the same foundations, embedding fragments of the petrified worshippers into its new walls. To this day, their outlines shimmer faintly when the light strikes the surface. To the outside observer, these rituals seem madness. To the people of Gunmetal, they are necessary rhythm, the inhalation and exhalation of the forge's soul. Even children understand the cycle: build, burn, rebuild. It is not tragedy, but reassurance, proof that the city still pleases the Emperor. The smeltborn recite a proverb older than any scripture: only dead forges sleep. Yet with every renewal, the cost deepens, the magma vents expand, the air thickens with particulates of unknown origin. Cogitator readings show fluctuations in the mountain's pulse, patterns resembling coded repetition: 32 beats, pause, then 32 again. The Mechanicus dismisses these as coincidence, but the workers say it is the volcano's heart counting the sins of men. The inquisitorial vox monitors have registered other anomalies. During the moments of greatest heat, the screams of burning sectors merge into a single harmonic frequency, detectable across the planet's astropathic channels. It is neither human nor mechanical, a resonance of perfect symmetry that fades as the fires cool. Some adepts claim to hear words within the sound, phrases in high Gothic, repeated endlessly: I see you, I forge you, I remember. Gunmetal endures. It always does. The ash settles, the air cools, and the forges awaken anew. The survivors call it rebirth. The Inquisition calls it contagion. And somewhere beneath them all, the mountain keeps whispering through its pipes, its voice now threaded with the rhythm of countless souls transformed into smoke. Faith continues stronger than before, for it has been proved again through annihilation. In the streets of glass and soot, pilgrims kneel upon the still warm ground, pressing their foreheads to the cracks and murmuring thanks. The volcano breathes, and they breathe with it. To live in gunmetal is to die by it, and to die by it is to be remembered forever in the sound of the next eruption. The Emperor's flame does not fade here, it devours, consecrates, and repeats. Gunmetal City is not immortal because it resists destruction, but because it transforms it into ritual, Oblivion is its covenant, and faith its fuel. At dawn, when the volcano's light softens and the manufactoria still hum in the slow rhythm between shifts, Gunmetal City resembles the inside of an immense, sleeping weapon. Every tower seems a barrel, every street a rifled channel worn smooth by centuries of use. The air hums faintly, as if awaiting command. From the upper spires to the deepest vent shafts, the city listens, because in that half-silence lies what its people call the Emperor's Echo. They say it comes at the turning of the day, when the mountain exhales its slow, cooling breath. A vibration moves through the strata, rolling like thunder beneath the souls of millions. It travels through the pipes, the rails, the hollow frames of unfinished guns. Workers pause. Priests bow their heads. Even the cogitators falter for a fraction of a heartbeat. To outsiders, it is nothing but seismic resonance. To those who belong to the city, it is the Emperor's voice moving through the metal, his unending reminder that he watches the forge of his dominion and finds it worthy. The priests of the Fire Creed record each manifestation. They mark the date, the duration, the magnitude, and then read omens from the pattern. If the tone deepens, they predict abundance of ore. If it rises in pitch, they warn of famine or rebellion. The data is sent upward to the Magisterium, where Mechanicus analysts overlay it with heat charts, finding in it no pattern at all. Yet no lord dares to forbid the belief. The echo sustains the population as surely as air and rations. Faith in the Emperor's nearness keeps the forges running when reason would have faltered long ago. Some among the Adeptus Mechanicus contest the interpretation. The venerable Archmagos Ferrum Pyre, in his surviving fragments of thought record, argued that the phenomenon might be mechanical, a self-sustaining resonance produced by the mountain's magnetic core, intensified by millennia of metal veins and machinery. His voice log ends abruptly mid-analysis, replaced by the phrase, auditory perfection achieved. The next day, his forge fell silent, its servitors locked in poses of genuflection. When the enforcers breached the sanctum, they found no remains, only the Archmago's outer shell, hollow and ringing softly, as though still vibrating with the last note of the echo. Others claim the sound is not natural at all, but the song of the dead. The cumulative murmur of every soul burned, crushed, or sacrificed in the renewals. Each has left a fragment of itself in the city's alloy, and now those fragments resonate together in eternal remembrance. The smeltborn call this the choir invisible. When the echo passes, they place their hands upon the walls and whisper the names of their ancestors, believing the dead answer through the heat. In these moments, gunmetal becomes a temple of communion between flesh and metal, living and lost. The difference ceases to matter. The Ordo Historicus has long debated the city's nature. Some savants argue it stands as proof of humanity's unbreakable faith, that even at the edge of damnation, mankind can forge worship from despair. Others see in it a portrait of decay so complete it circles back to divinity, an empire that maintains itself by constant immolation. Whatever the conclusion, all agree that gunmetal is not a city among others, but a reflection of the Imperium itself, a place where faith and ruin are one continuous act, sustained through memory of the Emperor's sacrifice. In the great archives of Scintilla, a few forbidden documents trace the lineage of gunmetal's creed to ancient Terran prototypes. There, in pre-imperial data cults, weapons were once considered extensions of the warrior's soul. Here, that creed has matured into theology. The gun is no longer mere extension, it is incarnation. Each weapon forged in the mountain's heart bears a residue of human suffering that gives it moral purpose. The Inquisition understands this in its quiet way. A pistol forged on Tholos does not simply kill. It enacts a prayer through destruction, reaffirming humanity's right to exist through violence sanctified. Yet the echo has grown louder with the passing of centuries. Its vibrations now register on planetary auspex, heard even in the lower domes of Hive Sibelius. Astropaths report disturbances when it sounds, a flicker across the warp, a brief veil of static that muffles psychic transmission. Some whisper that the mountain itself is learning to speak across realities. Others, that the Emperor hears through it. that he listens to the cadence of creation and destruction rising from Cintilla as reminder of his design. None know the truth. The Magisterium forbids speculation. They call it blasphemy to interpret the Emperor's echo beyond gratitude. But gratitude itself has begun to sound like fear. Still, the people work. They pray. The forges ignite, the guilds bicker, the enforcers patrol, the smeltborn sing. Above them all, the volcano burns with steady radiance, haloed in smoke that never clears. The ash drifts across the northern coast, darkening the sea until it resembles spilled oil. Merchant vessels pass through it, leaving black wakes that close again behind them. Even the wind seems weary, as though carrying too many voices. Each night, the sky over Tholos glows red. The colour never fades. It has no dawn, no dusk, only gradations of ember. To those in orbit, the light is unmistakable, an unending wound of fire upon Cintilla's surface, pulsing in rhythm with the planet's heartbeat. Pilots navigating the sector use it as beacon and warning alike. They call it the Emperor's Lantern. In their flight logs, it is described as constant, unchanging, eternal. But the adepts who live below know the truth. The mountain shifts, the tone deepens. Sometimes, late in the night cycle, the echo carries something beneath it. A second voice, slower, almost human, forming words that none can quite discern. Those who claim to have heard it describe it differently. Some swear it whispers blessings, others that it calls names. The Magisterium denies such tales, yet more and more adepts have begun recording the vibrations, transcribing them into text, searching for syntax within the noise. Perhaps the volcano truly speaks. Perhaps it remembers every hand that ever laboured in its shadow. Perhaps the Emperor listens through it, shaping humanity's faith in the language of pressure and fire. Whatever the truth, Gunmetal City continues, its people deafened and sustained by the same sound. Each hammer strike, each ignition, each scream becomes another syllable in a prayer without end. If the Imperium itself were to perish, scholars say the mountain would not notice. The forges would burn on, fueled by memory alone, echoing the rhythm of the God Emperor's heartbeat until the crust itself collapses into the void. And in that final silence, the last breath of the city would rise as smoke toward the stars, an ember flung across eternity, whispering the only prayer it has ever known. We forge, therefore we are,